Stuff I found interesting.
All right, and stuff I found interesting. We're going to start with something we teased last week. We chatted briefly about the Michael Jordan documentary last week. And since then, I've finished all 10 parts, Chad, and I've finally got to the end, and now I can finally share some of my thoughts. The documentary is called The Last Dance, and it's a Netflix original series. It's looking at the story of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, who won 6 championships right in kind of his peak. And it's an amazing documentary because it really takes you behind the scenes, into the locker room, into the training grounds, and gives you a sense of Michael Jordan as a basketball player. We chatted a little bit about last week is he was one of those names that transcends the sport. For example, someone like myself, I don't watch basketball, I don't know it that well, I don't really follow any of it, but I know the name Michael Jordan. And I feel like that's the same for a lot of people around the world. It's one of those sports names that really transcends the sport. And the reason was he became an icon, right? He became an icon of culture and an icon of kind of America for that time. And what he did for the NBA as a sport and as a kind of an organization was incredible. They were saying that before Michael Jordan played, I think the NBA was shown in like 20-something countries around the world. After Michael Jordan, it was like something like 80 countries around the world.
Insane.
So he really brought the world to the NBA and really like was the first big superstar and still is considered the greatest that has ever played the sport. And what's really cool is you see all these amazing players, kind of the LeBron Jameses, the Kobe Bryants, all these amazing players of today talking about how much they admire and really think that Michael Jordan was the best ever. So it's not even in debate. It's not one of those things where they're comparing eras. He really is the best player ever. So let's dig into the actual themes now. And the first theme that kind of came out for me was his work ethic. He worked harder than anybody else because he wanted to win so badly. One of the key characteristics of his personality that they kind of talk through the documentary is his competitiveness and his wanting to win at all costs and wanting to win absolutely everything. It's not just basketball. When he's gambling, when he's playing cards in the bus, when he's kind of... at one stage, they were throwing a game where they were trying to land a coin closest to the wall, and he was betting against the security guards he was playing with like 2 hours before a game. He's just one of those people who wants to win at everything. And he knows how to win things. He understood it wasn't just the will, it wasn't just the kind of the work ethic. He knew what to do. He knew how to practice deliberately, how to get the best out of his teammates, how to work properly with his coach and with his teams. And he really was an absolute winner. He knew how to win basketball games and knew how to win championships. And to watch that is super inspiring no matter what the sport, right? You don't have to enjoy basketball to be inspired by that kind of work ethic and that competitiveness to really go out and get what you want. Of course, the other side of that is if you're going to be in that kind of position with that sort of personality, you can't be a nice guy. Those things don't work. And we've seen that a lot. People like Steve Jobs and people like Elon Musk and these guys are really pushing the boundaries of what's possible. There is a dark side and there is a negative part in the way that they treat the people around them because they are so desperate to win. And sometimes that comes off in bad ways, right? If you don't know Michael Jordan like that and you don't kind of have that understanding that it's not personal against you, he's just so desperate to win, it can come across as not a good kind of personality and kind of a dick, to be honest. And so that balance was very interesting to watch, and the balance between what it takes to actually win 6 championships and what you have to sacrifice in order to get there.
Fascinating. And I, like you, Barry, previously have not watched much basketball. I would be fascinated to watch this documentary. And I suppose the reason that I'm keen is all of this behind-the-scenes footage. A lot of the time with these documentaries, they put in a lot of fillers from people who knew the person. And, they kind of use what they have, I suppose, to put a compelling story and a compelling narrative together. But the fact that there is this footage, which sounds like it is, really, really good quality and captures the authentic Michael Jordan at his peak, really makes it quite compelling to go and watch.
Chad, that's exactly why I think it's one of the greatest documentaries of all time, is because I don't understand how they got this footage. I don't understand. They must have let an entire film crew have full access to his entire life, to every practice, to every game, to the locker rooms. It's amazing the level of coverage they had. And what that enables them to do is have real cinematic footage, both on the court and off the court, to weave into the narrative. So they can play with chronology and timelines. Yeah. They can kind of bring interviews in and kind of weave them into the real games. And you get a sense that you really are watching his career, because you're not just hearing interviews about him playing, you're seeing him play, and you're seeing him talk to his teammates and fight with his coaches and all that good stuff. So it really is an amazing use of the footage that they had, and it's beautifully shot. Like, it's absolutely beautiful documentary, a 10-part series. And so even if you don't enjoy basketball, even if you're not a fan of Michael Jordan, from a pure cinematic kind of film kind of world, Chad, you would love this thing.
Ooh, that does sound really, really good. I certainly have to get it onto my watch list. Now, you've spoken us through some of the things you've learned, but I suppose these are things that you could kind of read between the lines, I guess, anyway, from a high-performing, highly successful athlete. But what were some of the other things that maybe needed a little bit of deeper diving to find out about him?
I think what was important for me was kind of his relationship with the media, right? So he was a superstar, and the media were all over him. And this was pre-social media, so I'm assuming it's even worse today with Twitter and all of these things. But he would leave his hotel room, leave the game, whatever, and he'd have hundreds of people shoving cameras in his faces, asking him very personal questions all of the time. And one of the reasons that he had a retirement halfway through his career was because the media was so overwhelming and kind of got in the way of his real life. He wasn't able to be himself and actually be a normal human being. And so I think we've seen a kind of a trend with a lot of famous people. When you watch these documentaries, you get the sense that maybe I don't want to be as famous as these people, because what you have to give up in order to do that is crazy. He wasn't able to leave his hotel room. He wasn't able to go out to kind of walk through a park or go to a shop or any of that stuff. Yeah. And watching the impacts of that on his psychological kind of well-being and his mental health was very interesting for me. I think that we often look at fame as like, oh, they've got it all sorted out. They know exactly what they're doing. They've got all the money in the world. They've got nothing to complain about. But the perils of fame is what really comes to this documentary as well. He was the most famous person in America at the time. He was kind of the superstar. And that comes with a lot of sacrifice, a lot of kind of pressure. Everything he did wrong, everything he said that was slightly off, everything when he would go and gamble and play golf with his friends, everything was hyper-analyzed. The newspapers would run away with stories as they do. And it really takes a toll on him. Yep. And being able to see into his world and really get his honest perspective as to how this is affecting him really made me rethink what fame is.
Yeah, it's a easy trap to fall in, I suppose, for a lot of us, where we look at fame as this incredible proposition. But you're right, there is certainly another side to that coin, and one that can certainly ruin lives as well.
One last thing, Chad, I wanted to bring up, which kind of speaks to the kind of person that Michael Jordan is, and it's something I didn't know, but I think if you were a basketball fan, you probably would know, that when he retired in the middle of his career, he decided he was going to go and play baseball. And he decided, I'm going to put basketball aside, and I'm going to go and try and make it in the Major League Baseball. So he went to a Major League team. He kind of signed up. He went into the amateur league, like the one below the Major League, and played, I think, a season and a half of baseball. Sure. And all of a sudden became the biggest star in baseball because he was Michael Jordan. And so they had these tiny, like little league grounds, which held like a few thousand people. And all of a sudden they were sold out because Michael Jordan was playing baseball.
Wow.
The reason that he did this was because he had just won 3 basketball championships and kind of won MVP and did everything he could in that basketball world. And he was needing a challenge. And his competitive nature, he had played baseball at school and he thought himself he was quite decent. So he's like, I'm going to go and start again. And to go and start again from the beginning and try and make it as a baseball player really shows you the kind of person that he is. Eventually he came back to basketball because he realized that basketball was where his true superstardom was. But he was a very good baseball player, and he really showed that he is a supreme athlete and someone that is willing to kind of put basketball aside and just take on a new challenge. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that does say a heck of a lot about his character. And I suppose for a lot of people, making it in one field just doesn't feel like enough. Like you said, he kind of wants to constantly be challenged. And I kind of see myself as a similar type of personality, to be honest. Whenever I kind of max out at a particular skill, I'm on to the next thing. And I wonder if that's a good thing. I wonder if it's a bad thing. Certainly, it sounds like there's some good character traits to take from it.
Yeah, definitely. There's pros and cons with all of these things, and there's trade-offs that you make. And there's obviously the risk that you end up chasing lots of shiny new objects, and you don't kind of stick with the one thing you want to get really, really good at. But at the same time, being able to have multiple different skills that you can kind of weave together in unique ways makes you a more powerful human being in other contexts. And so it really is one of those things you have to understand yourself.
Yep.
Understand what makes you tick and what really matters to you, and then live authentically in that. Don't try and look at someone else who's maybe decided to specialize in one thing and decide, oh, maybe that's the right strategy. Have the self-awareness to understand what kind of person that you are, and then go full steam ahead on that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Barry.
Across the pond.